a couple weeks ago, I made this pattern inspired by the name of the font that I had chosen. So I am going to take this single repeat, right? We see how it lines up over here. It's just a simple straight repeat. And I've saved this as a JPEG. It's on my desktop. Oh, that's my other classes one. So that's what it looks like, and we're going to open that up in Photoshop. So this is review. Do you guys remember how I defined this as a pattern? What is it in Photoshop as opposed to Illustrator, where we define swatch as a pattern? You don't remember? It's so in Illustrator, it's like pattern. Yeah, in Illustrator, it's object pattern make, right? That's how we would define this thing that we have selected as a pattern. In Photoshop, it's edit, define pattern. And that's going to define everything that's on this page as a pattern in Photoshop's system. So we can hit OK. So on another page, we're going to fill this with pattern. We can go to layer, new fill layer pattern, and get a big square of that pattern. And that's the easiest way to do it. Oh no, it's a half drop. That's annoying. If it's a half drop, we have to make the image size twice as big. We need to know this in pixels. Write that down. So we're going to multiply 339 by 2 on the canvas size. Image canvas size calculator. It's going to be 678. So want to make this a rasterized layer first. So these each get offset by half, and then it lines up perfectly, and it's a single tile. If you're doing a half drop, oh, it looks like there's a problem with it here, but that's probably my bad. Something to do with how I've translated the tiles. So I would go back and fix that before moving on, but just for the demo, we will keep going. And now we can go to edit define pattern. Back here, we can go to layer, new fill layer pattern, and we can see this pattern. Now it repeats closer to seamlessly. I feel sad about that, but and we'll lower the size so we'll be able to see it on her. Now I'm going to rasterize this layer because we are going to use the puppet warp or just the warp tool in order to curve this into some of these shapes, right? So we'll see how this goes. First off, that's how we got our pattern defined in there. Just a really quick review of the color blocking. So this is what the garment looked like or looks like, and we want to put a transparent or a semi-transparent layer of our pattern on it, but I want to be able to easily reselect stuff. So I've been filling on their own layer. I've been filling this layer with color that goes along the seams and the folds of this dress. So I actually had the time to be pretty anal here, where I've even put separate colors on these folds so I can treat them kind of even separately. Although we'll see how I actually decide to handle that. So just with the Polygonal Lasso tool, which is different than the regular Lasso tool, the Polygonal Lasso tool is more manageable. You don't have to hold it down the whole time. I click around the parts that I want to be able to select and fill with pattern later. It doesn't matter that I started off like into this blue section because when I use the paint bucket tool, it will, as long as we fill on this color blocked layer that the blue section is on, it will fill up to that section. Same thing down here, actually. For all of those sides, they've already been filled, so I don't need to worry about it. I can just click into them and back around to my start so that I have the whole guy selected. And then I can fill this, and I'll just use the same color as this part so that they will be able to be selected together. So, with those selections, I want to start carving out kind of chunks of this pattern in order to put on to the dress. So I need this pattern to be pixels. Right now it's like an editable layer, right? You guys have faced this before, I assume. So to rasterize the layer so that it's editable pixels, right? Because right now if I tried to select anything on it and copy it onto another layer, it wouldn't work. So we just right click on the layer and choose rasterize layer. And now if I do Command C and try to paste that square onto its own layer, there we have it. I like to put my squares between my color blocking layer and my background so that I can keep a good idea of the shape of the dress. So I think that the first thing I'll do is adjust this. Do this purple section. So this is pretty straight on, but I'll warp it a little bit. I can go to Edit, Transform, Warp. We'll talk about Puppet Warp in a second. Puppet Warp is very fun, but we'll hit it in a second. here I can adjust it so it's got a bit of curve. Maybe it gets a little bit closer together as it goes to the edge. This is going to be subtle because it's on the kind of flat part of the dress. But when you like it, you can hit enter and then instantaneously on the color block section with your magic wand tool, with contiguous checked, it's not picking up this little section of purple, so I like to uncheck contiguous when I'm doing this. I also want to uncheck anti-aliasing, actually. Although anti-aliasing at this point might not be the end of the world. We'll leave it off. Command-Shift inverse, and you can delete the rest of what's on that layer. So, looks like that. We can right away turn this to multiply or over, hue. Hard light's pretty good. Multiply is what we've been using. It seems like I would want to play with this even more, although some of the layers are coming out. I might knock down the opacity just a touch. I don't particularly mind if the clothing that's pictured in these is a little bit less saturated than others. All right, so turning on the color blocking layer. Let's do one of her side bodice pieces. So in this case, I'm leaving this pattern fill layer completely clean, and I'm copying and pasting. So I could even draw a box that I know is plenty for that side area. And then turn this layer on and do Command C and Command V, and it makes its own layer. Then edit, transform, warp, and we can really edit this so that it looks like it's going up away from the garment. You can always toggle this on and off and do edit, undo, and stuff. Magic wand tool, select on the color blocking layer, Command-Shift inverse, back to that pattern layer, and deletes. So I'm going to skip ahead to this skirt section, and I'm going to try to do this in a little bit of a different way. I'm going to use Puppet Warp. Puppet Warp, before I go much further, let me show you what you can use Puppet Warp for. This is pretty cool, guys. So if I have this image rasterized, or not as a background anyway, and I choose Edit Puppet Warp, this is what will show up, kind of a graph across the garment, across the photograph. And wherever I place a pin, it's going to hold the photograph. So I'm going to place a bunch of pins around the outside. Or I would want to isolate her onto her own layer separate from the background. You can add as many pins as you want, and you might get a little taste of what can happen here. I can use it to really manipulate her body in kind of disturbing ways. I can take her waist in till it's unnaturally thin. I wish we could see this. Yeah, so I'm just going to uncheck Show Mesh for a second so you can really see what's happening. Right? I can slim down her arms. We want the density to have more points so that I can add that there. I wonder if it's not going to like that. Yeah, there we go. Right? I can make her arms a lot thinner. Take her wrists way in. So this is what Puppet Warp, what I see it used for kind of the most. Right, we can raise her bust line. But we're going to use it to try to make the flow of our pattern match the flow of our dress. Okay, so does that make sense how I'm using it? I'm clicking and dragging on these pins that I've added, and it can manipulate her whole vibe. You can also, I think you can also rotate. So if I toggle, oh no, that didn't work. Never mind. You can rotate in Illustrator. We'll go over Puppet Warp in Illustrator too. It gets real cool in Illustrator because your garment isn't made of pixels, right? So see, if you don't add them around the outside, it kind of tilts the whole picture. That's why you have to add those pieces around the outside. All right, back to our new garments. I want a big piece for this one, as big as this guy. Back to the pattern fill layer, Command copy. All right. I am going to put this one above it so that I'll be able to really see the details of the pattern. So I do have my color blocking layer on, but it's below it. And then I'm going to lower the opacity significantly so I'll be able to see the shape of the dress underneath it. And then I'm going to try using Puppet Warp. So edit, Puppet Warp. Let me zoom in here. So I can, well, maybe try less points first, or normal. Probably the shape, her corners of her garments are okay, and we want to add stuff just to the middle. And I'm going to try to do this where I don't have to do a separate cutout for this flow in the front of her dress, right? I'm going to try to make it move with the flow automatically. So if I put some pins along this side and along the other side, I wonder, it might make me add. I can put pins in the center and drag down, right? So it'll look, maybe we need more over here. It's adjusting things. It'll look like the shape of the shape of this stripe of words is trying to fold forward with the dress. Or that's my intention anyway. I might have to play with this for a while. Thank God you're here. Everyone's absent. No, just Vic and I thought you were maybe sick too, and I was worried because Jen.
I slept, and I've never done that before this year. I've never been I never sleep good.
It happens. I'm gonna try upping this to have more points, so when I adjust the grid, I have like more control over the manipulation. So yeah, Jen emailed me that she was going to be absent because Vic got her sick. I did not.
Yeah, Vic has been sick.
I did not hear from Vic, but I assume that he's also not going to be here if he is that sick. So I'm trying to adjust this, and let me turn off show mesh. I'm trying to adjust this so that it looks like the graffiti cheeks is bending forward and around this shape. But I don't know how well it's going.
Yeah. Get there.
So this is Puppet Warp, and it's under Edit Puppet Warp. And it's normally used, we're just using it over here, if I go to edit. Puppet warp, the way you see it used a lot is for body manipulation, so I'm adding these anchors because otherwise it'll move the whole image around. All of these are anchors, and I can add anchors like on either side of her and make her, you know, outrageously skinny, and I can make her arms, you know, super skinny. I have the mesh hidden, but it's telling me I can't add one like so close to that, so I can choose more points instead, and it then allows me to do very close. So that's what it's normally used for, and you just hit enter to apply it, and it's fairly effective. But like on Instagram, when you see people who are like, "Oh, you used Photoshop to edit this to be more perfect," like they're normally noticing things like, now my bricks are a little bit warped because I adjusted this, and you know. So that's normally what it's used for. In here, I was trying to use it to get it to go around. Yeah, the wrinkles in the dress. I'm not sure how well it was going. I thought this would be a good choice, but I'm having some trouble. So edit, puppet warp. So at least I want this to kind of come forward and maybe get kind of crunched on the sides. Maybe it spreads out even though it gets crunched on the sides. Maybe that's what it wants. And to come down. It's a little bit, like I might do this by, that's kind of working. I might prefer to do this by having like another cutout that I warp, but I thought I would try doing it this way. But you can manipulate your patterns this way. It's kind of the end game here.
And there's no like limit to how many of those you can add?
It doesn't seem like it. I'm sure that there is, but I haven't faced it. Let me bring it up over here. I swear there's a way to rotate these two. Maybe it's Command. Okay, so Alt-click gets rid of it. Yeah, okay, so Alt-click and then clicking on one deletes it, but Alt-click and hovering around the outside of an anchor allows you to rotate the image shape. So it's fighting with this guy over here, so I'll cut that out so we can rotate it. Because it just needs a touch of rotation. Oh God. There we go. And I could drag it up further. Click over here. I could just drag it up, but I can also hold Alt and hover around the outside of it and try to rotate. So let me get rid of those guys. Puppet Warp is hugely powerful. In Illustrator, it's in particular very powerful because everything's made of vectors, so nothing gets distorted either. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So I can hit enter to apply that madness. I don't think this works the best, but back on the color block layer, even though this is on top of the color block layer, as long as I have this selected, I can use these tools to select my color blocks and then Command Shift Inverse and back to that layer. I can hit delete. It looks kind of reasonable. So I had lowered the opacity on that so I could see the color block layer through it, but instead I want to switch it to multiply, which is barely doing anything. It might be that on my original pattern, like, if I really wanted things to show up, like these darks to show up, without adjusting the tone of this pattern, which seems a little bit too dark for these transparency settings to work out. I wonder Is screen better? No. Please get. But anyways, it might be that I want to up the contrast on this dress. And I can do that to just the dress if I like. I've already selected, you know, the whole just the dress. So I can select all of these different parts. Or I could select the outside and do Command Shift Inverse, and now I'm just selecting the inside of Channel to Fill. And I could cut this dress out or copy this dress out of the background. So edit, copy, and then if I go to edit, paste special, I can paste it in place. Okay, so I'm just pasting this dress onto its own layer. So right now I could shut off the background layer and just have the dress. Because what I want to do is kind of up the contrast on that until it's, I think it looks a little bit better. So I can go to Image Adjustments, Brightness / Contrast. Just for that layer, I can see what it looks like. So there, even though it's not going to look good, like the white dress wouldn't look good anymore, if it starts looking good under your pattern, like I'm getting a much more shadow going on here now. That's too much, but something like that is perfect. I think that's, you know, good. So you guys know how I could keep going and fill out the rest of these color blocked sections, but really quick, I'm just going to review that you can do all of the same things on a illustration. So this section of the illustration is just a black and white garment, although it doesn't necessarily, like I could put my pattern onto this blue section and I could probably find a way to make that work, but I did it on the white section. So I can just go to Layer, New Fill Layer, and fill it with my pattern. Adjust the scale, maybe very small, maybe bigger. Remember, it really likes to be on 50 or 25 or 75. Rasterize this layer, else I can't mess with it. And then I can start copying and pasting squares from here. So we'll do this guy. Copy. Color block layer, select it, back on this layer, Command Shift Inverse, delete. So I didn't adjust how the pattern, I didn't adjust the warp of that. So let me step backwards. Image, warp or puppet warp. Yeah, we'll just do warp. And you can literally like grab. Maybe before I did this, I should have just hit Control T and rotated it, right? Because this layer is going to be, well, it's not that rotated, but maybe it should be a little bit more in that direction. Of course, now the warping gets all the more difficult, so might have not been worth that. Back to color block layer. Why? Sorry, I don't know. Okay, there's that. Select it. Okay. Then turn on multiply and get some of that good texture coming through. So those are all options for homework. You are going to do one fashion illustration, one texture map onto a photograph, and one flat. And we'll be starting this. These are really the in-class activities too. So we'll be starting those in class. Mostly the flats. I think I'm gonna have you start the flats in class. You should have brought flats from your fashion illustration class. So edit warp. And I can grab the center and bring this one down. Bring the sides in. So that really does look like it's wrapping around something, which is very satisfying. Come on. Hit enter. Back on the color block layer, even though it's not visible, I can select it. Oh no, I missed a tiny bit of it. Okay.
I think I was about to have a piece.
Am I? It's fine. I guess it's fine. Turn off color block and start to see some of that. So that looks neat. Okay, do those two make sense? All right, I'm going to stop the recording for a second there.